5 minutes past 10, our talkback lawyer David Whiting is here. He's got the headphones on, he's saddled up and he's raring to go. In fact, he's pawing at the ground saying, come on, let me at him. 1300 222 774 is the number, 1300 222 774. Morning to you, David.
Good morning, John.
Oh, look, you're just chomping at the bit, aren't you?
Perhaps I wasn't sure whether the right answer was nay or moo.
You can do both.
Yes. Champing at the bit would be nay.
Yeah.
Pawing at the ground I thought might be moo.
Yeah, could be. Mm-hmm. I don't know, our dog does a bit of pawing at the ground sometimes.
Okay.
Anyway, tell me, life insurance, if you've got multiple super funds and you've therefore got multiple life insurance policies, can you make multiple claims?
Yes, is the short answer.
Sorry, your dependents can make multiple claims, or if you're totally and permanently disabled, you can make multiple claims.
You need to think that you've got three levels of insurance. You've got straight life cover.
Yes.
And you can have as many of those as you want.
That's in case you die.
Yes, and technically it's life assurance rather than life insurance.
Yep.
Because you can insure something that might not happen, but you can't insure something that will definitely happen.
No.
So that's why it's the Life Insurance Act that talks about life assurance.
Yes, but
that's the pedantic lawyer.
It covers you during your working life.
No, you can have life insurance for so long as you're a member of the super fund. Right? So you might be in pension mode and still a member of the fund and you can still have some cover. So that's life. That's life cover. Mm-hmm. It is possible for you to get trauma cover where you're disabled to a point that you're not able to take work.
Yeah. Is that called disability insurance?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Or
and then you can also have
partial incapacity.
Loss of income.
Yes.
Cover, which is another one again.
Now the TPI or the disability cover, you can have as many policies as you like. As many policies as you can afford, I suppose, is the better way of saying it. Loss of income policy, the answer is you can never get more than the level of income you had before the incident giving rise to the claim.
So even if you've got multiple policies, they can't end up being a windfall?
No. So what you need to do is, you might come along and say, well, I'll maintain. I know lots of people with multiple super funds. I've got some friends who've had some health issues, which means that if they change funds, they wouldn't get the life insurance that they've now got. So a friend with a prostate problem now knows that if he was to change insurers, he wouldn't. He's very, depending on where he went, he'd be unlikely to get.
He'd have a pre-existing condition for the new policy, but it wasn't pre-existing for the existing policy.
Yes, some policies, some insurance companies and some super funds have policies that don't have pre-qualifications.
Oh, you'd really have to delve into the fine print to work that one out.
And they tend to be just straight term cover. They tend not to be any of the others.
Yeah.
So, but you can't, if you're on an income replacement policy, then there's a limit to the. It can never be more than you're insured for, and generally about 75%. The assumption being that you'll have less costs if you're not at work, and the aim is to get you back to work.
All right. Any other news?
Well, I had when we were talking on Tuesday of last week, the Philip Wilson, the Archbishop of Adelaide, was convicted in relation to charges that arose while he was the Bishop or Archbishop of Newcastle, and. In the event that matter goes, there's been no sentencing yet. It's a maximum of 2 years jail in New South Wales. In South Australia, the equivalent offence would have a $10,000 fine for failing to report suspected abuse.
Right.
But I went and I looked. We've got Section 327 of the Crimes Act here, which imposes a positive obligation on a person over the age of 18 who has information that leads the person to form a reasonable belief that a sexual offence has been committed in Victoria against the child under the age of 16 by another person. So we actually have a positive obligation, and its penalty is 3 years. So that's, and one of the matters that the Council of Attorney Generals is looking at is some uniformity as to penalties and expression of the charges. And my other item, John, was one out of the UK, and there were a series of people who were accused of a serious assault charge some years ago, and they were convicted and they lost on appeal. It turns out that the lawyers who acted for them in the first instance, and they pleaded not guilty and they were convicted, and they're all still in jail, or they were in jail.
Must have been very serious assaults then.
Yep.
Yes.
What happened was that the firm solicitors who acted for them in that matter acted for another party in another proceeding. and they learnt some evidence there that the security forces or the security services had information which would have led to a different outcome in the first hearing.
So in a totally separate case?
Yes. So it's like, let's say I have a matter today and I had a matter 3 years ago. The matter I've got today leads me to find something about the matter that happened last year which would lead me to think that there was some evidence that was not produced.
In the first trial?
In the first trial.
Which should have been produced?
Yes.
So don't you have an obligation to bring that to everyone's attention?
Well, at that stage, the matter's been referred by the prosecution back to the Court of Appeal. But they won't tell the lawyers precisely what the evidence is that may exculpate their
but they have
clients.
They have an obligation to the court.
Well, they do, John, but then there's this
client.
issue. Well, no, it's not a question. The lawyers don't know everything, but they know enough that there's an issue.
Yeah.
So the prosecution, the Crown Prosecution Service, is going back to the Court of Appeal and basically saying, we've got some information which we can't share with you, but they're not guilty of that, but they should be charged with something less. So I would incline...
And they're still in jail?
Yeah, well, as of last week they were, John. They might be out now. It's the issue of, do the security services let the police know everything that they need to know when there's a charge coming?
Yes.
It's quite distressing to find that the situation exists.
Are these terrorism related in any way?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. It's an interesting one. Anything else?
That's it.
Let's get to your calls. 1300. Oh, look.
Sorry, I do have one, John.
I was going to say the lines are full anyway.
The boat from last week. Remember? There was the man who had a boat in the marina.
Oh, the concrete boat that sank in the marina at Williamstown.
Yes, with a Spanish insurance company.
That's right. $150,000 boat, and he wanted a talkback lawyer to help him out instead of paying for some legal advice. We all thought that it would make sense for someone with a $150,000 yacht tied up at a marina to go and pay for some legal advice.
Well, there were several calls, and I've seen a bit on social media about the boat.
Yes.
I've heard a couple of stories, none of which I've been able to substantiate, and one was that he lived on the boat, and the second, which would make his address was given to us as Docklands, which in one view would be appropriate, even if Williamstown and Docklands have different postcodes. And the other one was that the boat's been in the market for sale for some period of time, at a price different to $130,000.
Right.
So,
but with a Spanish insurance company, we didn't really make much progress, did we?
No, didn't make any progress at all. Just somebody had to move the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, my view was it's still moored, just a little lower.
One way of looking at it. Catherine in Baroni is first up this morning. Hello, Catherine.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks very much. David, about 2 years ago, a young fellow was in trouble at home and he asked if he could leave his car and trailer stored on our big front yard in Boronia.
Yes.
And offered to pay us $50. His father wouldn't let him store them there. And he gave us $50 a month for about the first 6 months.
Yes.
Then we didn't hear from him for 2 years.
2 years?
The last we heard from him, we tried to ring him and left lots of messages. The last we heard from him was about 6 months ago. And he rang back and he said, look, I'm sorry I haven't been around. Things haven't been going well. Just sell the trailer and keep that towards the money I owe you and I'll contact you later.
What sort of trailer is it, Catherine?
Oh, we gave it to a relative, but it was worth about $150.
So just a small trailer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I needed a car trailer last Saturday. Do you think I could find one anywhere to rent?
Does that mean you pushed the car, John?
No, I had to drive halfway around Melbourne to find one because it was the historic Winton races were on, so all the car trailers were up there. Could not get one anywhere. Sorry, Catherine, I interrupted.
That's all right. So we're in a position that we're moving and we have to move the car. Now,
what's the car worth, Catherine?
It would be under $500, David. It's about an 80s-something Ford, and it's been sitting there for 2.5 years and it's looking absolutely terrible.
Have a look at the... There are provisions relating to the disposal of unclaimed goods.
Can I just tell you, David, what I've done?
Yep.
I went to the police. They said go to VCAT. I went to VCAT, and I can do it officially through VCAT to sell it. Probably get $200. I might have to pay to have it carted away. I don't know.
No. There's a shortcut here, Catherine.
VCAT said it'd be $495.
Yeah,
then
we've
they
done
told
this
me
before.
to go to Consumer Affairs.
Have you got a key to it, Catherine?
No.
Okay. Have you got a trolley jack or one you can borrow?
Yes.
Jack it up, tow it out onto the street, leave it on the side of the street. The council will sort it out for you.
Wow. Yes, I hadn't considered that.
Okay.
Because the obligations...
In terms of somebody that's offered me $200 for it, what do I have to do
I would take the money.
But
And do I have to put an ad in the paper or something? Or?
Well, that's why you need to have a look at the Australian Consumer Law and Fair Trading Act.
I've done that, and everything it does says relates to businesses disposing of unclaimed goods.
Well,
I can't get in,
that's
and
right.
I tried to ring them, can't get through.
No, I would be using the same processes and the same values, because you were a business, if you like. The aim was that you were being paid fees to store the car and trailer. So
it's an ad in the local paper.
An ad in the local paper, and then, or you can do what John suggests and put it outside. The difficulty is that it will be outside for some months before council moves it.
Not if you ring them up and say, "Can you come and take this car away?"
Yeah.
But we've dealt with this before, and that was the solution, the practical but somewhat sort of lateral solution that we came up with, Catherine.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine. Good luck, and I hope you like the
Bye.
new house.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, there is that as well. David in Hawthorne, good morning to you, David.
Good morning. How are you?
Thanks, David. How can we help you?
Yes, thanks for taking my call. I have a loss of rent dispute with an insurance company.
Commercial property or a residential?
Residential.
Yes.
The unit was leased to a relative of ours who has a disability, and it was leased for some 3.25 years from July 2014 up until October 2017.
Yes.
When unfortunately he trashed the property and flooded it and ended up in hospital with psychiatric issues.
So what's the problem?
Okay, the problem is that with the insurance policy, which is a residential strata community insurance policy taken out by the Owners Corporation manager, the external assessor has told us that the loss of rent, which is covered for the property, is only going to be paid out at the rate of rent that was being presently received at the time of the event. In the product disclosure statement, it clearly states that the loss of rent is based on 12 months. We have a lease.
And is it provided for a rate of rent?
The lease, we have a lease that describes what the rent is.
Yes. And was that rent being paid?
It was initially, but it did decline.
Well, 3.5 years in, what rent were you how much rent were you regularly accepting?
Originally, we were accepting $1,040 per calendar month.
Right, and now let's go to July 2017. What were you collecting in July and August 2017?
$650 per calendar month.
But you weren't creating a default. What were you doing for the shortfall of $350?
Right. The lease agreement.
I know the lease agreement says
$1,040.
But haven't we got to the point where you and your relative have orally agreed that you will accept $650 a month in lieu of $1,040? Because that's the insurance company's argument.
Yes.
So your loss of rent is what this tenant would have paid you because there's no indication that you were in the process of terminating the lease.
Correct. Well, actually, we were making moves to terminate the lease, and the family member was refusing to move. In fact, the problem lies in the fact that the family member who was staying in the property was a subtenant who would never pay rent, and the lessee, the tenant, was a group of other family members that were paying rent.
And were they paying the shortfall?
They were paying all the rent for the whole history of the lease.
Sure, it sounds to me as if it's an issue of whether or not the insurance company regard them as having been at arm's length, David.
Well, no, it's what the market rent is, and where I got to with David was that, look, over a 3.5 year lease, in a practical terms, the rent dropped to $650, And but it's David who's got insurance from the insurance company, not their tenant, who had the subtenant with the disabled relative. So I say David's still entitled to his $1,040 because of what he said, he's still collecting it, or was collecting it until the premises got trashed. And if the insurance company won't pay you, you have an insurance ombudsman where you can have a go at the negotiation, and if that doesn't work, you can have arguments with insurance companies at VCAT. So they're options that are open to you, David.
Good luck with that. Peter in North Melbourne, good morning and welcome.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, David and John. How are you?
Thanks.
Yes, my question is, I just want to know what VCAT and Office of Public Advocate's obligation is. Just very briefly explain, I had a hearing late last year.
What was your role in the hearing, Peter?
I was applying for guardianship administration of a parent,
Yes.
only living parent,
Yep.
and I was directed by legal people via medical fraternity that the parent had a cognitive impairment and was being exploited financially.
Yep.
There was an allegation made, investigation was directed by the initial hearing of VCAT,
Yep.
by the Office of Public Advocate to conduct. I've been investigated. I believe others have been investigated. I was told it would take 2 months. Now we've come up to 6 months. We've progressed and things haven't really changed that much for the better.
Your question today is, Peter?
My question is, I've written to VCAT and to tell them I want an urgent rehearing of it for a determination being made whether it's granted or not to be granted. Guardianship administration. Now, VCAT have told me it's gone back to the Office of Public Advocate. I've contacted the Office of Public Advocate and they're wanting me to go to another, my parents were 4 medical specialists to see whether,
John, Peter, the difficulty is that the Office of the Public Advocate is extraordinarily under-resourced. They have nowhere near enough people. Even an urgent application involving the Office of Public Advocate can take weeks to get on. And so, I find that to be a significant problem. The investigation, the test is, does your parent have a disability? As a result of that disability, do they require a guardian? Do they require an administrator? And if so, who should that person be? So are you an only child? Do you have other family members who support your position?
There's other family members that without going into it, I'm the designate, have been for years, during power of attorney for medical and financial.
Peter, the issue from a practical point of view is that VCAT will almost never appoint a family member as a guardian in circumstances where there is disagreement between family members. And that could be part of your problem. If you got the rest of your family on side, the issue might go away, might be resolved differently.
Or if you all have a united front to VCAT, if you say we all agree on this course of action, is that the case?
No, we don't.
And therein lies the problem.
Yes.
And so VCAT is absolutely desperate to make sure that it makes the right decision in relation to your parents' situation. And I suppose the only thing you can keep doing is negotiating with the Office of Public Advocate. Are your parents' situation got worse since then?
Well, there's only a parent left.
Yes.
The sole parent. And they are not accepting of the medical diagnosis from neurology at a hospital, specialist, geriatrician specialist, etc. And the Office of Public Advocate, they're saying, well, what we've got, I'm not really sure whether it's going to be granted. It's got to the point, what I've had to endure from family and outside of family, that I don't want to be in that role anymore, and I'm sitting for a governing body.
Then what you do is you go to VCAT and ask to be relieved from your role as the enduring power of attorney on the basis of these unbelievable delays, which are frustrating management of your parent.
And what does VCAT do? Do they appoint an independent person who is effectively then going to charge money to do what the family
Well,
has been...
let's split it in two, John. If it's guardianship, it is almost always the Office of the Public Advocate, not always, but almost always. If the family can't agree, the Office of the Public Advocate doesn't charge. What happens will be if
but they'll manage the affairs of...
No, they'll make overriding decisions in relation to residents, those kinds of issues. And what then happens is whether you have an administrator or a power of attorney, is that they basically have to manage the affairs of the represented person to take account of the directions of the guardian. So if the guardian says this person needs to go into care, this is the place they will go to, this is the bond which has been agreed, then it's up to the attorney to say, no, all right, we'll sell the house. And having sold the house, we'll use the money and then make other investment decisions.
All right, Peter?
All right, then. Thank you very much, David.
It might not be what you wanted to hear, but I'm afraid that is what the situation is, and that's what maybe you should have a last attempt to get some unanimity amongst the family, because the alternative you can say to them is, well, OK, we either all agree on this or otherwise we're off to have a guardian appointed instead, and then none of us have a say.
Yeah, well, I was appointed a guardian for an aunt. And my sister and two brothers came to the hearing, and it was clear that the member at VCAT wasn't going to appoint me as guardian unless they concurred.
Unless everyone said, yes, he's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is
I think it's the better way to do it.
It can be incredibly emotionally challenging and also financially complicated.
And if it's the Office of Public Advocate, they do interact with all family members looking for the right answer.
Yep, absolutely. Look, there's a number of people waiting. We don't want to do parking tickets. We've long since moved on from parking tickets, and the other thing we don't do is fencing disputes anymore. So after how many years, David? 20 years?
22,
we don't deal with parking tickets and we don't deal with fencing disputes. It's been some time since
it's because the law hasn't changed, John.
Well, no, because it's also like... There's a lot of other things people want help with, so we've just made that decision. It's a tough call, and I'm sorry, but we're not going to get to your calls if that's what you're waiting to talk about. Fencing disputes, there's a really good chapter in the Law Handbook about how to deal with fencing disputes, step-by-step guide in plain English in the Law Handbook, which you can get from any public library or online, published by Fitzroy Legal Service. And parking tickets, sorry, but you're on your own. Trevor in Inverloch, good morning to you, Trevor.
Yes, good morning, John.
Trevor.
David. I've had two unsatisfactory operations, and I'm left with a lot of pain. I didn't know whether, if I were to pursue legal action, whether to go to no win, no fee lawyer or a lawyer like yourself.
Well, it depends upon your resources, Trevor, but can I start somewhere different? I once took instructions from a lady who had significant amounts of abdominal surgery and was totally unhappy with the outcome. And I referred her, I referred her off to a medico-legal expert who actually rang me up and said, I'm not sure, based on what you've told me, that I'm not saying I'm happy with the outcome, but I'm not convinced on what you've told me that there's negligence. What I would like you to do is get her to make an appointment for me, for which I will charge, but it will be a discussion about the pluses and minuses of surgery and what outcomes might be. It's not that the fact that you've had two surgeries that didn't achieve the outcome that you planned for doesn't automatically follow that there was negligence on the part of the surgeons. There might have been,
yes,
but it doesn't follow like night follows day.
There are two different operations. One was a knee replacement.
Mm-hmm.
The other was a double hernia. The knee operations left me with a numb heel because
yes,
the nerve was
because of nerve damage. Yes,
nerve damage by
yep,
according to a podiatrist.
Yep.
It's also left me with a longer leg.
Yep.
The knee itself is always in pain because of, and as a result, at the end of the day, I've got a lot of swelling.
Is this phantom pain or?
No, real pain.
Okay.
Can't put one knee on top of the other.
No, you can get pain from people who have feet amputated. Can get toe pain.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And while I was in hospital recovering, this pain started in my lower groin, and I was told that I had to double hernias, and a year later had that operated on with a hip mesh, and the mesh is causing me agony every day.
There's certainly been some recent issues in relation to mesh, but I've seen it in relation to female patients rather than male ones.
I've read about that, yes.
Then I would be approaching, when I look at the investment that will be required, I'd be looking at a no-win, no-fee lawyer.
It sounds logical to me too.
All right.
Of which there are quite a few to choose from, Trevor.
Yes.
And go and talk to a couple of them.
I've been through all the specialists, and with the hernia operation, one says to take the mesh out, other says if you take it out, you're going to do more damage. And as it is, my life is not,
not great.
Not great.
Trevor, go and talk to 2 or 3 of the lawyers, get an understanding from them. And it's not about money. Well, it's not about money in terms of, it's really about, I need a better outcome.
Yes.
All right.
And I have to get a second knee operation for the other leg.
Yeah, I understand.
Too,
from what I've heard, is knee operations often require the opposite hip to be looked at. So,
knee operation requires the opposite. Because
it's not perfect.
You've compensated.
Because you have to compensate. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've heard of people who have put off hip operations to the point where they needed both hips to be done at the same time because they left one so late, so scared, so anxious that they ended up putting extra load on what used to be the good hip to the point where that then
ceased to be a good
deteriorated to the point where they both needed doing. And if there's something worse than a hip, well, hip operations now are remarkably smooth, but
I think that's my phone, John. It must be time to leave. Who knows? There you go. There you go. I've killed it.
I think that's a slab.
What do you mean?
Isn't that the penalty for the phone going off in the studio?
It probably is, John. I'll bring it in. We can drink half each on the program next week.
No, I'm not that interested, actually.
Yep.
I've kind of lost interest in beer. But hey, there are other people.
Okay, done.
Where were we up to? I was saying that, the good hip is so then overloaded to compensate for the bad hip that you end up needing both done.
Yes.
And getting both done at the same time is horrendous.
It would be the operation's okay because you're out, but they would have thought that the rehab would be frightening.
Very tricky.
Yep.
There you are. We learned so much, including that David Whiting forgot to turn his phone off today. I'll discuss an alternative to the slab with you off air. Nobody needs to know. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, John.
First time for everything. David Whiting, a talkback lawyer, helping you with free legal advice. And lots of people saying the first caller, Catherine, who had a card dumped in her front garden from someone who'd then not come back for it, you can apparently donate the car to Kids Undercover. Mandy from Kew is one of about 10 people who have suggested that. Yes, but you can't donate someone else's car to Kids Undercover. You can donate your own car, but you can't donate someone else's. So that's just a little bit more complicated. Either way, thank you for the suggestion, and I'm more than happy to mention a very good charity